Hello, darlings. It's your favorite ghoul friend, Elvira, here to talk about something truly terrifying. And I'm not talking about my hair after a humid night. No, this is much, much worse. We all love a good holiday, don't we? Especially one with explosions. The 4th of July, a day of barbecues, bikinis, and blowing things up. A celebration of independence. But for some, it's the day their freedom runs out. Permanently. It's all fun and games until the sun goes down, isn't it? The fireworks paint the sky in red, white, and blue. A dazzling distraction. But while you're all oohing and awing at the pretty lights, you forget to watch the darkness right beside you. And in those shadows, something else might be lurking. Something that doesn't care about your patriotic spirit. It sees the bright, disorienting flashes and the deafening bangs as the perfect cover for its own sinister celebration. A private party where the screams of the guests are just part of the soundtrack. You see, my little horrors, not every story from Independence Day ends with a happy bang. Some end with a scream that gets lost in the noise. Some tales are whispered around campfires long after the last firecracker has fizzled out. It all started with a promise of adventure. My friend Sarah and I were just out of high school, 18, and feeling like the whole world was ours. It was July 4th, 2008. We decided to go hiking in the vast forests of the Pacific Northwest to have one last perfect adventure before college pulled us in different directions. We were young, and we thought we were invincible. The plan was simple: a day hike up to a scenic overlook called Eagle Point. We'd watch the small town's fireworks display from above, far from the crowds. It sounded perfect, a memory we would cherish forever. If only we had known what kind of memory it would become. A memory that still makes my blood run cold. We packed our bags with water, snacks, a couple of cheap blankets. The trail was beautiful, lined with ancient pine trees that seemed to whisper secrets as we passed. The air was crisp and clean. We laughed and talked about our plans for college, our dreams, our futures. Sarah was so full of life, her laughter echoing through the woods. I can still hear it sometimes. We felt completely alone, but in a good way. It was just us and the wilderness. But as the afternoon sun began to dip lower, casting long, dancing shadows across the path, that feeling of peaceful solitude began to change. It started as a prickle on the back of my neck, the kind of feeling that tells you you're being watched. The whispers of the trees suddenly didn't sound so friendly anymore. Something was deeply unsettling. The mood on the trail had shifted subtly, a change in the air you could almost taste. It wasn't just the fading light, a snapped twig in the distance that we dismissed as a deer. Then came the feeling of being watched, a prickling on the back of my neck so intense I had to stop. Sarah just laughed it off as paranoia, as she always did. We reached Eagle Point just as the sky began to bleed into shades of orange and deep, bruising purple. The view was breathtaking, a vast expanse that made you feel both infinite and small. Far below, the town was a tiny cluster of lights, already buzzing with anticipation. We spread our blankets on the cool stone and waited, the silence of the mountain pressing in. The first firework shot up, a silent streak of gold against the darkening canvas. But as the delayed booms began to echo up the mountain, another sound joined them. A low, rhythmic rustling from the tree line just behind us. Not the random scuttling of a creature, but something methodical. Paced. We tried to ignore it. It was probably just an animal, we told ourselves. A raccoon. Maybe a bear, drawn by the smell of our snacks. But the sound persisted, a soft shuffling that seemed to be circling us. Finally, Sarah, ever the brave one, stood up and shouted,
"Hey, get out of here."
The rustling stopped, instantly. The sudden quiet was more alarming than the noise. We held our breath, listening. For a moment, there was only the distant pop of fireworks. Then a voice. It wasn't from the trees. It felt like it was right beside my ear. A man's voice, low and gravelly, whispered from the darkness. I froze, every muscle in my body screaming to run. Sarah just stood there, a silhouette against the exploding sky, and she asked a question that still haunts my dreams.
"Who's there?"
The silence that followed her question was heavier than any darkness. It stretched for what felt like an eternity, broken only by the crackle of fireworks from the town below. I grabbed Sarah's arm, my nails digging into her skin. "Let's go," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Now!" But she was frozen, staring into the pitch-black woods where the voice had come from. Another firework, a brilliant burst of red, illuminated the trees for a split second. In that flash, I saw it. A shape, a tall, broad figure standing just beyond the edge of the clearing. Its limbs seemed too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, swallowed by the shadows once more. That was enough for me. I pulled on Sarah's arm with all my strength, and this time she moved. We scrambled to grab our things, our hands shaking so badly we could barely function. Zippers snagged, water bottles tumbled away, but we didn't care. We just had to get away from that clearing. We didn't dare use our flashlights. A single beam would be a beacon, painting a target on our backs. We didn't want him to see where we were going, to know how utterly terrified we were. So we just started running, plunging into the inky blackness, stumbling blindly down the very same trail we had so happily climbed just hours before. Roots became tripwires, and low-hanging branches clawed at our faces like skeletal hands. The sounds of the forest, once a comforting symphony, had twisted into a cacophony of terror. Every rustle of leaves wasn't just the wind, it was him, closing in. Every hoot of an owl wasn't a bird, it was a signal. The snap of a twig sounded like a gunshot in the oppressive silence, and our own frantic footsteps seemed to echo his right behind us. I could hear Sarah panting behind me, the occasional sob escaping her lips, a desperate metronome marking our flight. We just had to get to the car. We just had to get back to the light, back to civilization. We ran for what felt like miles, our lungs burning, our legs screaming in protest. I risked a glance over my shoulder. I couldn't see anything but the dark, imposing shapes of the trees, standing like silent, ancient judges. Maybe we had lost him. Maybe, just maybe, it was all in our heads. We slowed to a walk, trying to catch our breath, the adrenaline beginning to ebb away. That's when a cold dread washed over me, colder than the night air. Something was wrong. It was too quiet. The sound of Sarah's ragged panting, the little sobs that had been a constant reassuring presence just behind me, was gone. I stopped and turned around, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Sarah?" I called out, my voice a weak, trembling whisper. No answer, just the wind sighing through the trees and the distant, mocking boom of the fireworks finale. I screamed her name over and over, my voice raw with a panic that clawed at my throat. Finally, I fumbled for my flashlight, breaking our one rule. The beam sliced through the oppressive dark, a frantic, desperate blade of light. It danced over gnarled trees and empty patches of trail, but there was no Sarah. The trail was empty. She was gone. It was as if the forest, ancient and hungry, had simply swallowed her whole, leaving not even a whisper behind. The next story takes us to the heart of the Midwest, to a place where the corn grows tall and secrets are buried deep. A place you'd never expect to find true horror lurking behind a white picket fence. It was the summer of 1999, the final summer of the millennium, and the air was thick with a hot and sticky July humidity that promised thunderstorms. We were in a small Indiana town, the kind of place that felt frozen in a bygone era. I was visiting my aunt for the holiday. Her name was Carol, a woman whose smile never quite reached her eyes. She lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood, a cul-de-sac of identical houses with perfectly manicured lawns that looked like green carpet. The neighbors were all friendly, always ready with a wave, a performance of politeness that felt almost rehearsed. The 4th of July was the biggest event of the year, the neighborhood's annual pageant of patriotism. The whole street would gather for a massive block party. Grills sizzled, kids ran shrieking through sprinklers, and as dusk settled, the first pops and whistles of fireworks began to punctuate the laughter. It was pure, unadulterated Americana. The party was in full swing by evening, but looking back, there was something fragile about it all, like a perfect picture just waiting to be torn. The air smelled of gunpowder-grilled hot dogs. My cousin Mark, a few years older than me, the unofficial pyrotechnics expert. He had a huge stash of fireworks, the good stuff his dad brought back from down south. He was setting them off in the middle of the cul-de-sac, surrounded by cheering kids and adults. He had one firework saved for last, a massive mortar shell he called the grand finale. As darkness fell completely, the street became a war zone of light and sound. Mark setting up the mortar tube in the center of the street. He lit the long fuse with a dramatic flourish grin on his face. The fuse sputtered and died just inches from the tube. A collective groan of disappointment went through the crowd. "No worries, folks," he said, walking back toward the firework. "I'll just relight it." Those were the last words anyone ever heard him say. And then, it happened. A deafening, instantaneous explosion. A raw, violent concussion shook the ground and rattled windows. The pavement scorched black in a wide circle. In the center, Mark was gone. Our last tale takes place on the water, under a sky full of fireworks. It happened just a few years ago, in 2022. My girlfriend Jessica and I rented a small cabin on a secluded lake in Minnesota for the 4th of July weekend. We wanted to escape the city to spend some time in nature. The cabin was rustic charming at the end of a long gravel road with its own private dock. The lake was huge, dark, deep ringed by dense forest. But at night the lake changed. It was eerily quiet and incredibly dark.